Look at your cheap suit. You are too poor to judge me. You are nothing to me.
Good morning. Please, everyone, take your seats. You know, I've been sitting in this chair for over 3 decades now, 33 years to be exact. Since 1991, I've presided over this courtroom. And in that time, I've seen just about everything you can imagine. I've seen good people make terrible mistakes. I've seen desperate people make choices they regret. I've seen young people stumble and fall and pick themselves back up again. But every once in a while, a case walks through those doors that reminds me exactly why I still come to work every single morning. A case that tests not just the law, but tests our very understanding of justice, of fairness, of what it means to hold someone accountable when they believe deep in their bones that accountability is for other people, not for them. Today is one of those days. And before I go any further, I need you to understand something fundamental about this courtroom. This is a place of respect. This is a place where every human being, regardless of who they are, where they come from, what their bank account looks like, or who their parents happen to be, stands equal under the law. I don't care if you're a CEO or you're unemployed. I don't care if you live in a penthouse or you're struggling to make rent. In here, in this space, we are all the same. We are all subject to the same rules, the same standards, the same consequences. That is the promise of justice. And as long as I'm wearing this robe, as long as I have breath in my body, that promise will not be broken. So let me tell you about the case before us today. The defendant is a young woman. Her name is Alexandra Catherine Whitmore. She's 24 years old, born on April 7th, 2000. She currently resides at 15 Hudson Yards, apartment 42B in Manhattan. That's one of the most expensive residential buildings in New York City, if you're wondering. Her father is Jonathan Whitmore, the chief executive officer of Whitmore Capital Management, one of the largest hedge funds on Wall Street with assets under management exceeding $18 billion. $18 billion. Her mother, Victoria Whitmore, sits on the boards of 3 major cultural institutions in New York. This is a family that moves in circles most of us will never see, a family with connections that stretch from Wall Street to Washington to the highest levels of society. But none of it matters in this courtroom. What matters is what Alexandra Whitmore did. And let me tell you, what she did is not just a violation of traffic law. It's not just recklessness. It's a window into something much deeper, something much more troubling about what happens when privilege becomes so absolute that it erases any sense of responsibility, any sense of consequence, any understanding that other people's lives have value. 4 months ago, on July 23, 2024, at approximately 5:15 in the afternoon, Alexandra Whitmore was driving her vehicle through the Upper West Side of Manhattan. Her vehicle was a 2024 Mercedes-Benz G-Class matte black New York license plate WCM 8491, a vehicle worth approximately $160,000. And she wasn't just driving, she was driving like the streets belonged to her, like the laws of physics didn't apply, like the safety of every pedestrian, every cyclist, every other driver was completely irrelevant compared to wherever she needed to be. We're talking about speeds of 85 miles per hour. 85, on Amsterdam Avenue between 72nd Street and 86th Street. For those of you not familiar with that area, that's a residential neighborhood. That's where families live, where children walk to school, where elderly people cross the street to go to the pharmacy. The speed limit there is 25 miles per hour. 25. She was going more than 3 times the legal limit, weaving between cars, running red lights at 79th Street and 83rd Street. And when I say running red lights, I don't mean she barely caught the yellow. I mean, the lights had been red for several seconds, and she blew through them at full speed. But it gets worse, so much worse, because when she was finally pulled over by Officer Marcus Thompson, badge number 2857, a 15-year veteran of the New York Police Department, at the intersection of Amsterdam Avenue and 86th Street at 5:22 in the afternoon, her response wasn't remorse, it wasn't concern, it wasn't even basic human decency. According to the police report in front of me, case number NY 2024-073455, and I'm reading this word for word from Officer Thompson's account, when he approached her vehicle and asked if she understood why she was being stopped, her exact words were, and I quote, Do you have any idea who my father is? He manages more money in a day than you'll see in your entire pathetic life. I'll have you directing traffic in Staten Island by Monday." When I read those words, I had to stop. I had to put these papers down and just sit here for a moment, because those words, that attitude, that breathtaking arrogance, it tells me everything I need to know. This isn't about a young person making a mistake. This is about someone who has been raised, whether intentionally or not, to believe that money equals immunity, that wealth equals superiority, that the rules that govern society, the rules that keep us all safe, simply do not apply if your last name is on a Wall Street firm. Officer Thompson, and I want to commend him for this, remained completely professional. He explained to her the severity of what she'd done. He explained that she had endangered lives, multiple lives. And do you know what Alexandra Whitmore did? She took out her phone, started recording him, started talking about how she was going to make sure this video went viral, how she was going to ruin his career, how her father's attorneys would have him in court for harassment. She didn't see a police officer doing his job. She saw an obstacle, an inconvenience. Someone beneath her who had the audacity to try to hold her accountable. Officer Thompson issued her 4 citations that day at 5:37 p.m. Citation numbers NY24 116623 through NY24 116626, reckless endangerment, excessive speeding, failure to obey traffic signals, and creating a public hazard. He documented everything meticulously. Body camera footage, dash camera footage, witness statements from 2 other drivers and 1 pedestrian who had to jump out of the way at 83rd Street. This is what good police work looks like. This is an officer who, despite being threatened, despite being demeaned, despite being treated like he was worthless, did his job with integrity. But the story doesn't end there. Oh no, it gets so much worse. That same evening, July 23rd at 8:47 p.m., Alexandra Whitmore posted to her social media accounts, Instagram, TikTok. Her Instagram account, username Alexandra Whitmore, has over 214,000 followers. These posts have been submitted into evidence as exhibits D through H. And what did she post? Videos, multiple videos, mocking Officer Thompson, calling him a wannabe cop with a power complex, making fun of his uniform, using her massive platform to humiliate a public servant who was protecting the community. One video, just one, got over 83,000 views in the first 12 hours. 83,000 people watching her mock and demean someone for doing their job. And then, and this is the part that truly disturbs me, 5 days later, on July 28th, 2024, at 3:45 in the afternoon, she was caught on multiple security cameras doing it again. Same neighborhood, same reckless behavior, this time on West End Avenue between 74th and 81st Streets. Same black Mercedes G-Class, license plate WCM 8491. Speeds estimated at over 70 miles per hour in a 25 mile per hour zone. Footage from a building security camera at 301 West 77th Street shows her vehicle nearly colliding with a mother pushing a stroller. The mother's name is Jennifer Martinez. Her daughter's name is Sophie. Sophie is 2 years old. 2 years old, and she came within feet of being hit by Alexandra Whitmore's vehicle. You see, I've been doing this job for a very long time. I've seen teenagers who made impulsive decisions. I've seen young adults who got caught up in the moment. I've seen people from difficult backgrounds who made choices born out of desperation or lack of guidance. And in many of those cases, I've shown mercy, I've reduced sentences, I've offered alternative paths, community service instead of jail time, counseling instead of fines. I believe in second chances. I believe in redemption. I believe that people can change, that they can grow, that one mistake doesn't have to define an entire life. But I also believe in accountability. I believe that when someone demonstrates through their actions, not once but twice, not accidentally but deliberately, a complete and total disregard for the safety of others, for the law, for basic human decency, then this court has an obligation to the community, an obligation to protect innocent people, and an obligation to send an unmistakable message that no one, absolutely no one, is above the law. Now, let me tell you about something else that's been happening behind the scenes. Alexandra Whitmore's father, Jonathan Whitmore, CEO of Whitmore Capital Management, a firm that employs over 400 people and manages $18 billion in assets, has been using every tool at his disposal to make this case disappear. Between July 30th and August 22nd, I personally received 9 phone calls to my chambers. 9. I've received 6 written letters on expensive letterhead. I've had 5 different people come to my office. 5, including a city council member, a state assemblyman, 2 prominent attorneys from one of the most powerful law firms in New York, and even a federal judge, a colleague of mine, calling in what he described as a personal favor. All of them suggesting the same thing, that perhaps we could work something out, that maybe the young lady has learned her lesson, that maybe a substantial contribution to a charitable cause, they mentioned figures between $200,000 and $500,000, to organizations like Safe Streets New York or the Police Athletic League, might be more constructive than a harsh sentence, that maybe we should think about her future, her career prospects, her potential. Let me be absolutely clear about something. I don't care how much money someone has. I don't care how many billions they manage or how many politicians they know or how many judges they play golf with. Money does not buy justice in this courtroom. Influence does not buy a free pass, and no amount of charitable donations, no matter how generous they might seem, will change what happens here today. Because here's what I think about. I think about Jennifer Martinez and 2-year-old Sophie. I think about that moment on West End Avenue when a mother looked up and saw a black Mercedes bearing down on her and her baby at 70 miles per hour. I think about the terror she must have felt, the split second when she realized she might not be able to get out of the way in time, the nightmare that would have followed if Alexandra Whitmore had been just 3 feet to the left. I think about 76-year-old Harold Bernstein and his wife Ruth, 74, both retired teachers from PS 87, married for 52 years, who were crossing Amsterdam Avenue at 79th Street at 5:17 p.m. on July 23rd when they had to scramble back to the curb because Alexandra Whitmore couldn't be bothered to stop for a red light. Harold has a heart condition. Ruth has arthritis. They could have fallen. They could have been killed. I think about all the young people watching this case, wondering whether the system works the same for everyone, wondering whether justice really is blind or whether it has perfect vision when it comes to seeing dollar signs. I think about what message we send if we let wealth and privilege shield someone from consequences, what we're teaching the next generation about right and wrong, about responsibility, about what it means to be part of a society. And I think about what could have happened. We are so fortunate, so incredibly fortunate that no one was hurt. But what if they had been? What if Sophie Martinez had been in the wrong place at the wrong second? What if Harold Bernstein had lost his balance and fallen into the street? What if any one of the dozens of people on those streets that day had paid the price for Alexandra Whitmore's arrogance? I have grandchildren, 5 beautiful grandchildren, ages 4 through 14. My youngest grandson, Daniel, is 4 years old, born September 15th, 2020. And when I think about him playing on a sidewalk, when I imagine him crossing a street with his mother, when I picture someone like Alexandra Whitmore driving 85 miles per hour through his neighborhood with complete disregard for his life, for his future, for everything he could be, it makes me feel something I rarely feel in this courtroom. It makes me angry, not in a hot, impulsive way, but in a cold, determined way. The kind of anger that comes from knowing that we have the power to stop this, to prevent it, and that if we don't, we're complicit in whatever happens next. Now, the prosecutor in this case, Assistant District Attorney Michael Rodriguez, who has been with the Manhattan DA's office for 11 years and has prosecuted over 450 traffic cases, is asking for significant penalties: a fine of $25,000, a 3-year license suspension, 200 hours of mandatory community service, and a jail sentence of 120 days to reflect the severity of the repeat offense and the defendant's complete lack of remorse. The defense attorney, Sarah Blackwell from Blackwell and Associates, and she is an excellent attorney, one of the best criminal defense lawyers in New York, graduated from Columbia Law School in 2008. She's done her job admirably. She's arguing for leniency, pointing out that Alexandra has no prior criminal record, suggesting that a fine of $5,000 and 100 hours of community service would be appropriate. She's emphasized that her client is young, that she graduated from Chapin School in 2018 and from Georgetown University in 2022 with a degree in economics, that she's about to start a position at a major consulting firm, and that a harsh sentence could derail her entire career before it even begins. I've listened to both arguments carefully. I've reviewed every piece of evidence, the police reports from July 23rd, the body camera footage showing Alexandra's behavior toward Officer Thompson, the social media posts from July 23rd at 8:47 p.m. where she posted a video with the caption, "Imagine being such a loser that you become a traffic cop. This guy seriously thought he could intimidate me." The security camera footage from July 28th at 3:45 p.m. showing her vehicle nearly striking Jennifer Martinez and Sophie. I've considered her age, 24 years old. I've considered her background, her education, her opportunities. I've considered everything that a judge should consider. But I keep coming back to one fundamental truth. We have laws for a reason. Speed limits exist for a reason. Traffic signals exist for a reason. And the reason is simple, elegant, and non-negotiable: to protect human life, to ensure that we can all move through our communities without fear that someone's recklessness, someone's arrogance, someone's belief that they're too important to follow the rules will destroy everything we love. What troubles me most about this case isn't even the speeding, as dangerous as that was. It's not even the reckless endangerment, as serious as that is. It's the attitude, the complete absence of empathy, the inability or unwillingness to understand that her actions affect real people with real lives and real families. When I look at the evidence, when I read Officer Thompson's report, when I watch those social media videos, when I see that security footage from West End Avenue, I see someone who has been taught through years of experience that consequences don't apply to them, that their family name, their father's wealth, their social status creates a bubble of immunity around them. Well, not today, not in this courtroom, not while I'm sitting in this chair. Let me explain something about sentencing. When a judge sentences someone, we're trying to accomplish several things simultaneously. First, punishment. Yes, there must be a consequence for wrongdoing. That's fundamental to justice. Second, deterrence. We want to ensure that the person standing before us doesn't do this again. Third, we want to send a message to everyone else watching that this behavior will not be tolerated. And fourth, perhaps most importantly, we want to protect the community from future harm. In most cases, I can balance these goals with a sentence that's firm but offers hope, a sentence that holds someone accountable but doesn't destroy their future. But this case is different. We have multiple violations on July 23rd and July 28th. We have not just a lack of remorse, but active contempt for law enforcement documented in social media posts viewed by over 80,000 people. We have attempted intimidation of Officer Marcus Thompson, and most troubling of all, we have a repeat offense just 5 days after the first incident. 5 days. That tells me that either Alexandra Whitmore doesn't understand the seriousness of what she did, or she understands perfectly well and simply doesn't care. Either way, anything less than serious consequences would be a complete failure of this court's duty. I know some people will say I'm being too harsh. They'll say Judge Carver is known for compassion, for giving people breaks, for seeing the humanity in everyone who comes before him. Why is he being so tough now? And my answer is this: compassion without accountability isn't compassion, it's enabling. When I show mercy, it's because I see genuine remorse. It's because I see someone who understands what they did wrong and wants to make it right. It's because I see someone who made a mistake but isn't defined by that mistake. But I don't see any of that here. What I see is someone who thinks the rules don't apply to them. What I see is someone whose actions on July 23rd and July 28th, whose words to Officer Thompson, whose social media posts to 214,000 followers, all demonstrate that she has learned absolutely nothing, except maybe that she needs more expensive lawyers next time. The defense has pointed out that Alexandra has no prior criminal record. That's true, and normally that would weigh heavily in favor of leniency. But having no criminal record isn't special. It's the baseline expectation of being a law-abiding citizen. We don't give awards for not breaking the law until now. The defense has also emphasized that she's young, only 24, born in 2000, that she's still maturing. And yes, I understand that young people's brains are still developing. I understand that they don't always grasp consequences the way older adults do. But at 24 years old, you're old enough to vote. You're old enough to serve in the military. You're old enough to sign contracts and get married. And you're certainly old enough to know that driving 85 miles per hour in a residential neighborhood is dangerous. You're old enough to know that threatening a police officer is wrong. You're old enough to know that using your massive social media platform to humiliate someone is cruel. And you're definitely old enough to know that when you get caught doing something dangerous on July 23rd, you don't go out and do it again on July 28th. This isn't about a young person making an innocent mistake. This is about someone who believes rules are for other people. And unless this court intervenes right now, unless we send a message so clear that it cannot be misunderstood, I fear what will happen next time, because there will be a next time. People with this level of entitlement don't stop until something forces them to stop. So here's what I've decided, and I want everyone to understand that I've given this more thought than almost any sentence I've ever imposed. I've considered every argument from both Mr. Rodriguez and Ms. Blackwell. I've weighed every factor, and I've prayed about it, because decisions that affect someone's life aren't easy, even when they're necessary. On the charge of reckless endangerment from July 23, 2024, citation number NY24116623, I'm sentencing you to 120 days in the custody of the New York City Department of Correction. On the charge of criminal intimidation of a law enforcement officer under New York Penal Law Section 21551, I'm adding another 90 days to be served consecutively. On the charge of reckless endangerment from the second incident on July 28, 2024, documented by security cameras at 301 West 77th Street, that's an additional 120 days, also consecutive. That's a total of 330 days, 11 months. You will serve this time at the Rose M. Singer Center on Rikers Island, and I'm ordering that there be no early release, no work release program, and no special accommodations. You will serve your time like every other person in that facility. Your reporting date is December 9th, 2024 at 8 a.m. In addition, I'm imposing a fine of $35,000 to be paid in full within 90 days of today's date. That money will be divided equally. $10,000 to the Families of Traffic Violence Victims Fund, $10,000 to New York City Public Schools Safe Streets Education Program, $10,000 to support the NYPD's community safety initiatives, and $5,000 to the Guardian Angels who work to keep our streets safe when others won't. I'm also suspending your driver's license, New York license number W7294833, for 4 years. 4 full years, beginning today and ending 4 years from now. And when those 4 years are up, you'll retake both the written test and the road test. You'll complete a comprehensive driver safety course, minimum 40 hours, and you'll perform 300 hours of community service, specifically with organizations that support victims of traffic violence. So you can see firsthand the real human cost of the kind of reckless behavior you engaged in on July 23rd and July 28th. Furthermore, during your 4-year license suspension, you are prohibited from operating any motor vehicle whatsoever. If you're caught driving, you'll face additional criminal charges and a minimum of 1 additional year in jail. No exceptions, no excuses. I can see the shock on faces in this courtroom right now. Some of you think I'm being too harsh. Some think I'm not being harsh enough. But let me tell you why I've made this decision. Alexandra Whitmore needs to understand that actions have consequences. Real consequences, not consequences that her father's $18 billion hedge fund can make disappear, not consequences that expensive lawyers can negotiate away. Real tangible consequences that will affect her life. 11 months on Rikers Island is a long time. Long enough to think, long enough to understand, long enough to hopefully emerge as a changed person. But it's not so long that it destroys someone's life. She'll be out by next fall. She'll still be 25 years old. She'll still have decades ahead of her. She can still build a career. She can still become a productive member of society. But she needed to learn this lesson now, before her arrogance and recklessness killed someone. Because make no mistake, that's where this was heading. It was only a matter of time before her behavior resulted in tragedy. And I would rather have her spend 11 months on Rikers Island being angry at me than have her spend the rest of her life knowing she killed 2-year-old Sophie Martinez, or 76-year-old Harold Bernstein because she thought she was too important to follow the rules. The 4-year license suspension is designed to be meaningful. In New York City, you can survive without driving. We have subways, buses, taxis, but it's still a significant inconvenience. And that's the point. Driving is a privilege, not a right. When someone abuses that privilege as egregiously as Alexandra Whitmore has, they need to lose it for a substantial period. As for the $35,000 fine and the 300 hours of community service, those are designed to ensure something positive comes from this negative situation. That money will help people who've been affected by reckless driving. That community service will, I hope, open her eyes to the human cost of behavior like hers. Now, I know what people are going to say. They'll say I'm making an example of her because of who her father is. And you know what? They're partially right. I am making an example, but not because of who her father is. I'm making an example because of who she chose to be, because of the arrogance she displayed, because of the contempt she showed, because of the danger she posed to innocent people, because of those social media posts to 214,000 followers. If this had been a first offense, if she'd shown remorse, if she'd apologized to Officer Thompson, if she hadn't posted those videos, if she hadn't done it again 5 days later, we'd be having a very different conversation. I probably would have given her a fine, some community service, maybe a 1-year license suspension, and sent her on her way with a stern warning. But that's not what happened. What happened was a display of entitlement that frankly disgusts me. And I've been doing this too long to pretend that a slap on the wrist will change that attitude. To the parents watching this case, whether you're here or watching online or reading about it tomorrow, please teach your children that everyone deserves respect, that police officers are people doing difficult jobs, that laws exist to protect us all, that money and status don't make you better than anyone else. Because if you don't teach your children these lessons, if you let them grow up thinking they're above it all, you're failing them. And when they end up in a courtroom like this one facing a judge like me, it'll be too late. Alexandra Whitmore, you're 24 years old. You have your whole life ahead of you. 11 months from now, you can walk out of Rikers and make a choice. You can choose to be bitter, to blame me or the system or Officer Thompson, or you can choose to learn. You can choose to understand that you were wrong. You can choose to become better. I hope you make the right choice, because I don't want to see you back here in 5 years or 10 years facing even more serious charges. I don't want to read someday that you finally did cause that accident, that you finally did hurt someone. But that change has to start with accountability. It has to start with accepting that what you did was wrong. This sentence, 11 months in jail, 4 years without a license, $35,000, 300 hours of community service, isn't about me being cruel. It's about justice. It's about protecting the community. And yes, it's about giving you a wake-up call that might just save your life or someone else's. You have the right to appeal within 30 days. Your attorney will explain that process. But I've been very careful in crafting this sentence to be within the bounds of law and appropriate to the offenses. Officer Thompson, thank you for your service. Thank you for your professionalism. Thank you for not letting this defendant's behavior compromise your integrity. You are exactly the kind of officer we need. To everyone else, I hope this serves as a reminder. The law applies to everyone. Justice is blind to wealth and status. In this courtroom, we treat everyone with respect, but we also hold everyone accountable. If you're a young person watching this, learn from it. Understand that your choices have consequences. If you're a parent, use this as a teaching moment. And if you've been given advantages in life, remember they come with responsibilities, not immunity. This court is adjourned. The defendant will be remanded into custody immediately. Reporting date December 9th, 2024 at 8 a.m. The fine is due within 90 days. The license suspension is effective immediately and runs for 4 years. Bailiff, please proceed.